Joaquin Lopez y Lopez. Native of El Salvador, Lolo was 71 years old at the time of his death. Director of Fe y Alegría, a religious education program that organizes schools for primary-age children in poor communities. Father Lopez y Lopez helped found the UCA in 1964. Throughout his life, he was exemplary in his self-denial and fondness for second-hand things. Never a trace of luxury. Lolo was a man already condemned, not by any death squad, but by prostate cancer. He did not know how long he had. Meanwhile, he kept working tirelessly until, without his suspecting, it would be this way. The enemies of the poor people claimed his life before his illness could. Joaquin Lopez y Lopez.
Juan Ramon Moreno. Another native of Spain, Juan Ramon was the librarian at the UCA's Center of Theological Reflection and the assistant director of the Oscar Romero Center at the UCA. Juan Ramon was especially grounded in Ignatian spirituality, the spirituality of the founder of the Society of Jesus. He gave many retreats for religion and was known as a gifted preacher. Juan Ramon described the plight of Central America. The poor are impoverished due to hoarding and exploitation by the rich, and the rich are enriched at the cost of the impoverishment and misery of the masses. To free the poor by giving them access to living conditions consonant with their dignity as human beings and children of God entails sacrificing the privileges of wealthy oppressors. Our world is an overdeveloped world with an impressive supply of consumer goods and services, but one in which there are more poor than ever. Our world is marked by the lack of solidarity and the mistrust of people toward each other. And alongside all this, there is a new awareness of the dignity and rights of the poor. God does not want things to go on as they are. Juan Ramon Moreno. Presente.
Elba Ramos. Born in 1947, Elba worked as a domestic and coffee picker. She met her husband while working on a coffee plantation. From 1976, she was employed by the Jesuits to cook and clean at their residence. Elba moved with her husband and 2 children to the guardhouse at the UCA in 1989. Her husband was hired that year to be the guard at the UCA's main gate. She's remembered as a woman sensitive to others' needs, intuitive, and an exceptional person, according to Father John Sobrino. Sobrino wrote that on the day she was killed, she washed her best dress so that she could give it the next day to a woman who had taken refuge in the UCA from a recent bombing. Elba Ramos. Presente.
Elba's only daughter was 16 years old and in her first years of high school at the time of her death. Selena had worked as a catechist and participated in activities such as band and basketball. Selena's boyfriend of 2 years was a classmate and player on the school's basketball team. They had planned to approach Elba in December to ask for her permission to marry. Selena Ramos. Presente.
Archbishop Oscar Romero. Salvadoran priest and martyr for the poor of his country, after being named Archbishop in 1977, Romero was forever changed by the brutal murder of his friend, Father Rutilio Grande, who was shot dead along with 2 of his parishioners by the military. To honor Rutilio, Romero engaged in the political situation of war-torn El Salvador and emphasized the preferential option for the poor, a duty of all Christian peoples. Before his death, Romero wrote to President Jimmy Carter to cease U.S. military aid to the government. His pleas fell on deaf ears. He was shot by U.S. trained assassins in the middle of his homily on March 24, 1980. Oscar Romero once said, Christ invites us not to be afraid of persecution, because believe me, my brothers, he who commits himself to the poor must share their destiny. And in El Salvador, we already know what is the destiny of the poor: to be abducted, tortured, captured, and to turn up as corpses on the roadside. I am happy for our church is persecuted precisely because of its preferential option for the poor, and for trying to incarnate itself in the interest of the poor. It would be sad if in a country where they are killing so terribly, we did not count priests among the victims. They are the testimony of the church that is incarnate among the problems of the people. Archbishop Oscar Romero.
The four American churchwomen. On December 2nd, 1980, four American churchwomen, Maryknoll's sisters Maura Clark, age 50, and Ita Ford, age 40, Ursuline's sister Dorothy Kazel, age 41, and lay missionary Jean Donovan, age 27, were brutally raped and murdered by a Salvadoran military death squad. Jean Donovan was the only daughter of an upper-middle-class family from Connecticut. Jean earned a master's degree in business administration at Case Western University in Cleveland. Jean gave up prospects for a successful business career to join the diocesan mission team. Jean worked as a bookkeeper for the church's Caritas program while assisting Sister Dorothy Kazel in the distribution of food for the poor and the refugees fleeing the repression. Deeply devoted to Archbishop Romero, both she and Dorothy were present at his funeral on March 30th, 1980, that ended in a massacre. She also lost several friends to the repression. Friends encouraged Jean to leave El Salvador, but as she wrote in a now famous letter, Jean could not because of the children. She asked, whose heart would be so staunch as to favor the reasonable thing in a sea of their tears and helplessness? Not mine, dear friend, not mine. The four American churchwomen, presenting.
Archbishop Juan Gerardi. Juan Gerardi was an auxiliary Archbishop of Guatemala, a defender of the Mayan poor, and a tireless champion for human rights. Gerardi led and organized the Roman Catholic Church's Truth Commission into the devastating 36-year Guatemalan Civil War that ended in 1996. Over 250,000 people were killed or disappeared, and over 1.5 million Guatemalan refugees fled the country. Both the Church's Nunca Más Commission and the UN concluded that the US-backed right-wing dictatorships were responsible for over 93% of the atrocities committed. On April 26, 1998, 2 days after the release of the Church's Truth Commission, Gerardi himself was brutally bludgeoned to death in the garage of his own home. His face was smashed by a concrete slab, and his body was identified only by his priestly rings. His assassination was ordered by the military. Juan Gerardi wrote this before his death: "To open ourselves to truth and to face our personal and collective responsibility are not options that can be accepted or rejected. They are indispensable requirements for all people and societies that seek to humanize and set themselves free. They make us see our most essential human condition, that we are all sons and daughters of God, called to participate in our Father's freedom. Years of terror and death have displaced and reduced the majority of Guatemalans to fear and silence. Truth is the primary word, the serious and mature action that makes it possible for all of us to break the cycle of death and violence and open ourselves to a future of hope and light for all. Archbishop Juan Gerardi, presente.